Again, is probably the most athletic player on this team. And
why you would use that, especially when one call.
Just a horrible situation for them.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Hello and welcome to a TakeaSide presented by Sided Debates. We've got a great show for you today, but before we get started, be sure to get onto Sided.co or the Sided Debates app to post topics, vote, comment, and engage with other users on the site to climb up that leaderboard for a chance at winning a $25 Amazon gift card. The more interaction your debate can get, the more points you earn, inching you closer to that top prize. With a combination of MLB starting up, NHL and NBA playoffs, and the NFL offseason in full swing, now's a great time to hop on Sided.co and start posting. Switching into our first debate, we got our first taste of football since free agency in the 2022 NFL Draft. Many teams got to fill their biggest needs with the biggest names in college football. I am joined by Blake Sevenbergen, Jackson Reed, and Kyle Mathis to debate which team had the best draft. Jackson, let's start with you.
Well, Max, we're off to a great start already. You told me exactly, or you said exactly what I'm trying to say. The Ravens filled their needs. They needed a safety. They waited on Kyle Hamilton. They didn't trade up. They didn't get panicky. They let Kyle Hamilton fall right into their lap. They needed an interior offensive lineman. They picked up Tyler Linderbaum, who I think was the best pick, the best interior offensive lineman in the draft. Obviously, Evan Neal, those guys, they play tackle. I'm talking interior offensive lineman. Tyler Linderbaum, probably one of the best. The Cowboys probably should have got him at 23. I digress. In round 2, you get David Ojabo from Michigan, a guy who's been to the college football playoff for a reason. I mean, Michigan had a great defense last year. David Ojabo was certainly part of that. Great pick for them. The main reason why I think that Baltimore had the best draft is they filled their needs. They filled what they needed, and Baltimore was probably considered 1 or 2 pieces away, and they got their 1 or 2 pieces in the draft. And now I think if you're Baltimore, you've loaded up on these 3 great rookies, and these are just the top 3 picks in their draft. Now you can go and make a run at your division.
See, I'm thinking the same thing, Jackson, with the Jets. The Jets, everybody knows, are a bad football team, right? But the best way to fix the problems of a bad football team is to draft the best players available when you have the opportunity to take them. You can't tell me taking Sauce Gardner at 4 isn't one of the best steals of the draft. I can't believe Stingley got drafted before him. Sauce Gardner gave up his longest reception in college was, 13 yards, and he didn't give up a single touchdown? And then you get Garrett Wilson in 10, who is an incredible deep threat for this team that already has some decent wide receivers. And then Jermaine Johnson falls all the way to them at 26 after they traded up. Are you kidding me? This is a guy that should have gone in the top 15, top 20, and you're getting him at 26. Sign me up for that. The Jets drafted 3 of the top players at their respective positions, 3 positions that this team desperately needed, and they got better through the draft. That's why the Jets win.
Well, I think that the New Orleans Saints won the draft, and here's why. They got Chris Olave in the first round. I think Chris Olave is the best receiver coming out of the draft from Ohio State. He actually increased his total yardage in his senior year, which is really, really impressive. And he made it to the playoff twice, made it to the national championship, so he has that championship experience. I think that he can help the Saints with Jameis Winston. I also think Trevor Penning was a huge pickup for the Saints. They need to protect Jameis Winston. He was sacked 27 times last season. They need an offensive line. And I think Trevor Penning is their guy. I mean, just think about the fact that he was picked number 19. And I think that picking a guy that low, but a guy with that much talent is really, really, really impressive. And I think that, like I said, the receivers need to have time to get open downfield so that Winston can throw them the ball. Also, they got Alontae Taylor from Tennessee, a cornerback. He has 41 solo tackles on the season on Tennessee. And also, like, even though the Purdue game in the bowl season was just a lot of yardage, I mean, the average passing yards per play was 8.9. So it wasn't like they were going to the secondary to throw the ball. It was mostly dump-offs. And they also got a bunch of other guys, too. I mean, their defense is looking super good, which their defense was already good last season. They just needed to increase their offense, and I think Penning and Olave can really help that. So that's why I think the Saints can win the draft. And just in today, actually, the Saints picked up Chiefs. They picked up Tyrann Mathieu from the Chiefs, which is really, really important for their defense. Their secondary is looking really good.
Okay, couple blowbacks. Let's start with Kyle and the Saints. Sorry, Chris Olave was the best receiver in the draft?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
What?
I'm sorry. I'm
better?
sorry. Garrett Wilson.
No,
I'm
no.
sorry. Jamison Williams.
No.
Drake London. Those are 3 receivers that are so much better than Chris Olave. What? Sorry. And second of all, Trevor Penning. Yes, the offensive line powerhouse of Northern Iowa. No. Alontae Taylor. Did you watch the Purdue game? Did you watch it? It wasn't dump-offs. It wasn't dump-offs like you're saying. It was 8.9 yards of just dotting up the secondary, and Alontae Taylor was a part of the Tennessee secondary just as much as anybody else on that team was that day. That was an abysmal game. You know what? I'm sorry. I don't think Alontae Taylor is an NFL-ready player right now. It's going to take developing. I think he will be good. Sorry, Chris Olave, I think he will be good. I don't think he will be as good as Garrett Wilson, which goes to Blake's thing. This team has a lot of great pieces, and they drafted the best available people. Sure. Who's going to protect Zach Wilson? Because last I saw, he was running for his life last year, and they picked up Max Mitchell, the offensive tackle out of Louisiana Lafayette, in the 4th round. But what good is that going to do? You drafting receivers and drafting edge guys, take that out of the equation. Drafting offensive guys, how is that going to help you when you don't have anybody to protect Zach Wilson?
I mean, I can't disagree with that. Obviously, the Jets' offensive line is atrocious. But
31st in football, by the way.
Yeah, but Max Mitchell is 6'6" and 307 pounds. He's a big body. And
so is every other offensive lineman in the league.
You got to start somewhere, and at least they made an effort in the 4th round to draft a lineman. I think their biggest reach for me was Breece Hall at 36. I don't think that he needed to go to the Jets or that early in the 2nd round. He ran a 4.39, super athletic, but they've got running back pieces already. I think that's where they should have gone offensive line. Otherwise, I think the Jets were on top of things. The Jets did everything they needed to do to make their football team better.
I just want to say one thing before we go. The New York Jets, when you get 5 or more draft picks because you're a terrible team for so long, I think you'll definitely get some heads turned about having one of the best drafts. I think they need to actually make the playoffs for once, and then maybe we'll respect them. But I still do think that the Saints are going to make it farther in the playoffs than the Jets and the Ravens because of their draft picks. Olave is the best receiver.
Knock that off. We'll be right back after the break. Dylan and I are going to debate on whether David McCormick should be in the Raptors or should not be in the Raptors. Stay with us.
After Kansas's national championship victory, a debate sparked whether or not the Jayhawks senior David McCormick should have his jersey hung in the rafters. McCormick is thought of as the main reason why Kansas pulled off the 2 Final Four victories. But does it warrant a jersey being hung in Allen Fieldhouse? I am joined by Dylan Vanderveen and Jackson Reed to discuss whether or not McCormick should be in the rafters. Dylan, let's start with you.
All right, so this doesn't really seem like a huge debate to me. I do not think Dave McCormick has earned going in the rafters no matter what he's done for KU.
No.
Everybody loves him. It doesn't matter. His stats don't even compare to any of the big men that are in the rafters right now. Not to mention that to qualify to get into those rafters, you have to be a first-team consensus All-American. And Dave McCormick was never a first-team All-American, so therefore he can't be in the rafters. But even if we moved past that point and said, hey, well, let's expand it a little bit. Let's maybe include McCormick. Guys like Greg Ostertag, who had better stats than Dave McCormick. Dave McCormick, 12 points a game, 1 block, 1 assist, 7 total rebounds in his best 2 seasons. Dave Ostertag had 10 rebounds, 3 blocks a game, and 8.7 points a game. Eric Chinoworth, again, not in the rafters, 11 points a game, 2 blocks, 1 assist, 7.5 total rebounds in 2001 and 2000, and he's not in the thing. Neither one of those guys were first-team All-Americans. I'll send it to you.
Right. And first of all, I agree with you. It's not going to be much of a debate. David McCormick doesn't belong in the Raptors. But I understand the whole narrative. David McCormick was hated on the whole year. There were a million mean tweets about him. Dave can't do this. Dave can't do that. And he showed everybody wrong. And, he was the key part of winning a national championship. Right. But Mario Chalmers was the key part of winning a national championship. He's not in the Raptors. Devontae Graham, who had a better career than David McCormick 3 times over, he's not in the Raptors. So, there's so many legendary Kansas players that are left out of those Raptors. Frank Mason, another one of those names, they're not in the Raptors. So please enlighten me as to why David McCormick should be in the Raptors. Well, he won us a national championship. Does not fly as an argument for me. Was he on the team? Sure. Was he a top 3 or 4 player on a national championship team? Sure. That does not warrant you to be in the Raptors with the stats that he had this year. There were times where we were like, man, we should bench David McCormick. He's really not that great.
There were times that David McCormick where I'd watch him 10 times a game. He'd get an offensive rebound and would be yelling, "Yes, Dave," and then he'd take it down to his body and then try to go back up, get a foul, make one or two free throws, or get stripped and then get the turnover. So, Dave McCormick, just because he's loved by the fans, so Tim Tebow for the Denver Broncos, he was loved by the Broncos. Are we going to put him in the Broncos Ring of Honor?
Certainly not.
I'm just saying.
Certainly not.
That's how it feels like to me when someone brings this argument up to me. Like, guys, and then there's still guys left out who were first-team All-Americans. Frank Mason, Devontae Graham, 2 guys you mentioned. Dotson recently. Ochai Agbaji will be in there eventually, in my opinion. And Perry Ellis is another big one. He was a forward for us, obviously one of our bigger forwards of the day, but 15 points, 6.5 rebounds, 5 steals a game, or 0.5 steals a game, sorry. And these guys are just all left out. And talking about David McCormick being in that over them is just excruciatingly painful to me to even talk about sometimes.
Now, okay, before we send this away, let me premise something. We're not hating on David McCormick. It really does sound like we are, but we did compare him to Tim Tebow with the Denver Broncos. We're not. It's not like that. What it is like is David McCormick doesn't belong on the list of names that are immortalized at the most sacred ground in all of college basketball. You can't confidently say that Dave was as good of a player as Ochai Agbaji. You can't confidently say that David McCormick was as good as any of those players up in the Raptors. Those are sacred names up there in the Raptors, and David McCormick certainly is not one of those names.
Yeah, for the first time this semester, it seems like you and me kind of
agree for once, right?
So that's all the time we have today. But I'm gonna send it back. I'm gonna send it back to Max over there.
Welcome back. With the NBA second round starting up, we can now look into some of these teams' offseason moves. Specifically, which of these teams are under the most pressure to perform this offseason? I'm joined by Jack McGarr and Carson Shea to discuss. Jack, who is the most important team who needs to have a great offseason?
The biggest team that has to have a great offseason this year is the Chicago Bulls. Right now, you've got Zach LaVine as a free agent coming up. The only way I think the Bulls get him back is by having him sign a 5-year Supermax contract. That puts him at $42 million per year. The Bulls don't have any cap room if they sign Zach LaVine to that deal. They've got Zach LaVine, Vucevic, Lonzo Ball, DeRozan, all taking up the cap space. We see what the Bucks just did to them in the first round. They've got that roster right now, and the Bucks still murdered them in the first round. How are you going to sign Zach LaVine to that max contract when you know that it won't even go up against the first-round Bucks team?
All right. Well, in my opinion, it's the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, the Nets had what could have potentially been one of the greatest big threes ever with James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving. They only ended up playing 16 games together when they had over 100 to play. That was one of the biggest fails ever, and I think they need to make up for that. They did the trade for Ben Simmons, right? But what did he do? He did not play once at all.
Nope.
Kyrie Irving this season, he's on the player option. What if he decides to leave? Then all they have is Kevin Durant and Ben Simmons, and that's still so much drama.
I think Irving, number one, will accept his player option. I mean, that gives him upwards of $39, $40 million a year for that year that he signs for the player option. Why wouldn't you want to come back when you've got Kevin Durant and, again, potentially Ben Simmons if he decides to play? Kyrie Irving will sign his player option.
Right, but Kyrie Irving in the past, like the Celtics, you'd think he would have wanted to stay there, but he decided to leave. You never really know what to expect from Kyrie.
That's fair, but with the Celtics, there was a lot of turmoil there. the fans weren't really loving him to begin with. Right when he signed it, they were all happy, and then 5 games in, they were already writing him off. The Nets still care about Kyrie. They still want him there. I think Kyrie understands that. And again, he's got Kevin Durant, one of the best players in the world, right next to him. He's going to stay, sign his player option.
All right. Well, your point is just basically around Zach LaVine, but I have more than just Kyrie. So let me list some players to you. Kyrie Irving, Patty Mills, LaMarcus Aldridge, Bruce Brown, Nick Claxton, Goran Dragic, Andre Drummond, David Duke Jr., and Blake Griffin. You want to know something that's similar with all of these players? They're all free agents or have player options. All of those players. The Nets need to find something to do in this offseason. I don't know. There's no way they're going to keep all of them. And 7 of those 9 players played in their final game in the playoffs, so all of them were key pieces.
The only pieces that the Brooklyn Nets care about this year, this offseason, Kyrie Irving, Patty Mills, and maybe Andre Drummond. Blake Griffin, you can let Bruce Brown go. He's going to be.
Bruce Brown was so good for them.
He's going to be a
underrated
loss.
Piece.
He'd be a loss, but if they have to sign him to a big contract, they're not going to sweat it.
Right.
Blake Griffin, Bruce Brown, all those guys. Nicholas Claxton's on a team option too, so he's restricted anyway. But they don't have a lot of key pieces that are leaving. The Chicago Bulls right now, their roster, again, didn't even compete with the Bulls. They have to sign Zach LaVine to a big contract. You traded away all your draft capital for Vucevic and in the DeRozan sign-and trade. You've got no first-round picks coming up. The Nets do have first-round picks that they got for Harden. They got 2, in fact. The Bulls have really no first-round picks coming up for the next couple of years. They have to make off-season moves through free agency, and they need a power forward and a center bad because Vucevic guarding Giannis, that was a scary sight in the first round.
It definitely was, but I think that the Bulls were plagued with injuries this season. They had Zach LaVine be hurt. Then in the playoffs, they didn't have Lonzo or Caruso there at the end, and I think those are big pieces for the team. So what if we see them healthy, all 5 of them?
Injuries come with the name of basketball. Every team gets injured in the postseason, and it's really who is the healthiest at the end. Zach LaVine needs knee surgery coming into this offseason. Are the Bulls really going to sign him to a 5-year max contract when they know he's injured and needs knee surgery?
He was an all-star this season. They're going to want him back.
What if he gets knee surgery and he tears it again? You're really going to have that bad contract sit for 4 years when that 5-year contract doesn't fit the timetable for any of the other key pieces you have. Vooch is a free agent in 2023. DeRozan a free agent in 2024. Lonzo Ball and Caruso also free agents in 2025. Zach LaVine wouldn't be a free agent until 2027. That doesn't fit the timeline at all. You need to win now. And I don't think LaVine proves that you can win now if you sign him to a max contract this offseason.
Right. Well, one thing we can both agree on, it looks like Giannis and the Bucks, they're the team to beat in the East. So both these teams are going to have to do something this offseason.
Yeah, really. I mean, both of these teams need to find a roster that can beat the top teams in the East. More specifically, Giannis and the Bucks. Giannis looks like he might be a Finals MVP this year, and the Bucks look like they might go back-to-back. But we'll have to see what the Bulls and the Nets do this offseason, and we'll throw it to break.
National champions deserve a clean campus. Don't wait for other Jayhawks to pick up your mess. Keep the University of Kansas clean.
Welcome back. For our last debate, I am joined by Haley Schick and Jordan Ziegler to debate their early candidates for MLB MVP for both the American League and National League. Jordan, what are your thoughts?
So first off, in the American League, I have Byron Buxton. He's been an absolute stud. His WRC plus is 218 right now, 118 points above league average. He's 6th in the AL for WAR. He's tied for 3rd in the AL with home runs at 7. He's batting 283 and has an on-base plus slugging of over 1,000. Like, that's insane. Not to mention, he's hitting the ball hard over 50% of the time. And then in the National League, I have Nolan Arenado, a WRC plus of 226, even higher than Byron Buxton's, a WAR of 1.9, 3rd in the NL, home runs 6th, 3rd in the NL, an average of 368. I mean, that's ridiculous. Plus an on-base plus slugging over 1,000 again, and a BABIP of 393. So he's batting 393 when he puts the ball in play. I mean, that's just nuts.
Yeah, I mean, Nolan's a given. Like, you really can't argue that. But Byron Buxton, he's 28 years old now, and of the last 7 seasons, he's only played with more than 92 games in one of those seasons. And he has a lot of injuries, and I feel like, with all of that, like, I don't think he's a candidate for MVP, because even though he was a #1 prospect, like, at one point in time, I just don't think he panned out to what exactly he should have been. And though he's very strong defensively, he's super fast, and he has great stats, I just kind of think, based on his injury history, that he's not a good candidate just for that reason alone. And then I said personally, for Wander Franco, he's the shortstop for Tampa Bay Rays, and right now he's one of those like young hot players in the league. His he probably won't finish in the top 10 this year, I don't think. But in next few years, I think that he definitely will put up a great candidacy for the MLB MVP, just because he cannot strike out. He's only struck out in 12% of his plate appearances, which is better than Gurriel, Freddie Freeman, Juan Soto, and Trey Turner, Vladdy, just to name a few. He's better than all of them in the strikeout percentage, and the MLB strikeout rate is 22.6%. So I think that he's definitely a good candidate. And my other strong candidate would be Shohei Ohtani. Obviously, given he's definitely changed the face of baseball and like what people think of pitchers and how they can bat and everything like that. And though both of these two players have minor injuries right now, I think just their show-stopping kind of like hot young ways are definitely gonna pan well for them this season.
I agree. Shohei was amazing last year, but he's not going to replicate it again. Last year was a superhuman year for Shohei. He's only batting .228 right now. His on-base plus slugging is .685. I mean, that's horrible. And then with the pitching, he's got a over 4 ERA right now and a whip over 1. So he's allowing, on average, at least 1 base runner per inning. He's pitching below average. He's hitting below average. He's not top 5 in any hitting categories, and he's only top 5 in strikeouts for pitching. He's just not playing at an elite level right now, and that's why I think you can't say he's an early favorite for MVP. And like you said with Wander Franco, he's a great prospect. He's going to be the face of baseball in a few years, but not right now. Right now, he's got a WRC plus of 170, and he's not top 5 in any major statistical batting category.
Yeah, I think with Ohtani, like, though, he just is one of those dynamic players that has, the show and the flair, I think that like is not as common in the MLB. So I definitely just, even with some questionable numbers or slumps here and there, obviously his opening day start wasn't the best, but with all that, I still think he's a candidate to, defend his crown as AL MVP or potentially league MVP.
Well, I think we can all agree that there's some great young talent in baseball that we look forward to watching this year. And with that, we're going to send it back to Max.
And that's all the time we have for today. Before we go, be sure to create your own Sided account to be able to post debates of your own, as well as comment and vote on others' debates. Thank you so much for tuning in for our last show of the school year. This has been a lot of fun, and I'm already looking forward to returning next year. Special thanks to my co-producer Ryan Atchison for making this show better each week, and thanks to our TD Cheyenne Jing for making this show possible at all. For all of us here at TakeaSide, we'll see you next year.